Hello everyone and welcome back to Cook With Me Live. You'll have to excuse the appearance. I've had a little bit of an injury to explain, I guess, myself, and hence why we didn't have this happening last week. So it was, I guess, a little bit of well, actually extremely unexpected. It's funny how quickly these types of things happen. But basically chin met pavement on a falling off of a kid's scooter, trying to be the cool auntie on Easter. And yeah, so 4 stitches in the chin, 5 broken molars, and a really kind of messed up jaw later. Hence why we couldn't do Cook With Me last week. So I'm back, and you'll just have to excuse the big fat bandage on my chin. And it's almost like I planned it, because all I'm eating at the moment is soup. Starting to get a little bit of chewing action back, but the jaw's still a bit locked. So please be very careful on your scooters and in general just realize how quickly things can happen. So the one thing I will state though is it was really awesome driving home from the hospital and realizing that I was organized for illness, the unexpected times. And I was sitting there kind of in my semi-delusional state after this incident and thinking to myself, how exciting, I have broth in the freezer and I have this in my homemade, or I guess home first aid kit, and I've got these things on hand. And it was such a relaxing, calming feeling knowing that I didn't have to scramble, especially when all the stores were closed on the holiday, to get myself organized, to really look after myself and give my body that really good hit of instant nutrition to help me heal through that. So that's where we're at today. And I'd love to hear from you guys. Please give me a little hello. Let me know if you're going to be cooking with us tonight, or if you're just watching. Maybe some of you are just going to be dancing to Mambo number 5. So that's what we're making tonight. I've called it Mambowl number 5. And the reason being is that I also sometimes call it breakfast soup. And there are just so many different versions of breakfast soup that we can make that I'm going to call this version. It was so hard to choose particular ingredients to demonstrate. But I'm going to choose this particular version, number 5, and then I'd love to hear all of your guys' creations when you get to be making breakfast soups like a master, because it is that easy. And especially coming into winter, or even on just a morning where you need a little bit of extra nourishment and sustenance and comforting, I just find that a breakfast soup in the morning is just a wonderful way to start the day, not only from a nutrition perspective, but also from, I guess, an emotional, supportive perspective. There's something about a warm bowl of soup. So let me know. I know that we have soup lovers, we have soup not so lovers. So let me know where you are on a scale of 1 to 10, because I'm hoping that if you can give this one a try, and maybe you're not a dinner soup lover, but you'll be a breakfast soup lover. So give this one a shot, because I promise you that this type of soup, I'm going to show you how to make it so quick that you can literally get up, and because you're in the flow and you've got things already a little bit organized, in a matter of less than 5 minutes, you can have soup ready to go. Okay, now those of you that don't like a really liquidy soup, we don't have to put a lot of liquid into it. It can mostly just be liquid for the sake of cooking the rest of the veggies and the rest of the yummy bits that you put into the soup. Very simple. Okay, so let's get straight into it. But I do want to really talk you through the simplicity of this, because I don't want you to sit here thinking, oh my gosh, I'm making soup for breakfast. That sounds complicated and hard. Okay, it definitely is not. So I want you to really grasp from this video, I guess, just how simple and easy it can be. And it's just based on whatever you've got in your fridge at the time, plus a couple little things that you can have organized in advance. All right, so the first thing that you want to get organized in advance would be some broth, or some homemade stock, basically. People use that word interchangeably. So what I like to do is I make the stock in a slow cooker, and then I freeze it into these little silicone molds that kind of pop it out as a bit of a golden, I guess, a golden block. And so this is a stock that I made that has got a bit of beetroot in it, hence the color. Okay, but this is just a vegetable stock, vegetable broth. And I know it looks red, it actually looks like meat, but that's beetroot. And so any broth that you have on hand, it's basically made from scraps of veggies and from maybe a bit of extra carrot, celery, and onion when you make your broth up. So make up a nice big batch. Hopefully you've got a nice big slow cooker. If not, you might want to get one. They're not that expensive. And then you've got this ready on hand. So from this flavorful, nutritious base, we can quickly and easily pull together a breakfast soup. We can make more flavorful rice by cooking this with the liquid for the rice, or whatever you're cooking that's going to absorb the liquid Sometimes you just want to be adding it to flavor up a sauce for a stir fry, or add a little bit of liquid with a little bit of extra flavor and nutrition in any of your other cooking. So having that on hand is your first, I guess, port of call. And it'd be lovely if you could kind of always have that flow happening. When you know you're getting low, you put a new broth on, and then you just freeze them. As soon as they're frozen, you can pop them out and store them in a different container in the freezer. So when I get up in the morning and I feel like a breakfast soup, first thing I can do then is go into the freezer and grab myself even just one of these blocks. Okay, now if you only have the silicone cupcake containers, that's all right, freeze it in those. Okay, and you might just need 2 of them. But if you're just making soup for 1, even soup for 2, you don't need more than 1 or 2 of those blocks. Okay. And then we're not making a huge batch. This is not, I guess, an instance where I'm talking about double batching or triple batching for your effort. If you're just whipping together a quick breakfast, it's nice to have kind of a fresh soup made just for the amount that you're going to eat this morning, okay, or whenever you're going to have this. Now, the first thing I probably should state too is, for those of you that are sitting there going, hang on, who eats soup for breakfast? All right, so I get a lot of questions from people asking, what are some breakfast ideas? How do I possibly get a healthier breakfast into my kids, for example? Or many adults that I know, particularly mums, let the busy rush of the morning happen, you don't eat, and then all of a sudden your morning errands happen, and then it's probably 11 o'clock by the time you've put anything in your mouth, if not later. So please make sure that you value that opportunity to get some really good quality nutrition into your body as early as possible. It doesn't have to be super early in the morning, but at least before kind of a normal lunch meal. Let's try to get you a good quality breakfast. The people that I have had do that and change that habit of skipping breakfast to having a good quality breakfast instantly notice the difference in how the rest of their day goes. More importantly, their ability to cope with the busyness and the stressfulness of days. So it does make a big difference, provided we can get some good quality nutrition into that breakfast. All right. It's a very different story to just have a fairly plain old cereal with a little bit of milk or non-dairy milk. There's, a different quality of nutrition depending on the levels of those. Ideally, this is a way to get some yummy vegetables into your diet, into your belly straight first up in the morning. Okay. So breakfast soup looks like this. Get up, still pretty much half asleep, take out the pot, go into the freezer, grab out a block of liquid. If it's just for me for 1, I probably don't need more than that. But if we're going to make for 2, let's just grab 2 of them. Okay, that goes into the pot. We can even start heating that already, start melting it down. Nothing complicated there. Just going to turn that on, and it can be on high because normally in the morning we're in a hurry. So that's going to start melting. And then open up the fridge and decide, okay, what's my breakfast soup going to be made of this morning? And it's seriously dependent on whatever you've got in your fridge that needs to get used up, whatever you've got on hand that is leftovers from the night before. Okay, I actually have some leftover roast veggies in the other fridge I forgot to bring out. But even leftover roasted veggies, leftover stir-fry veggies, or even if you just have fresh stuff, then it literally looks like this. Okay, keeping in mind that if you're just making a small batch for 1 or 2, you probably even 1 leaf of kale would be plenty. Okay, a couple green beans if that's what you've got on hand. We're just going to knock off the tops and the tails. So as you can tell, I'm not following the recipe at the moment. And there's a reason for that, is because I just want to show you the flexibility that we have with being able to pull together a really delicious and also extremely nutritious breakfast. Okay, so at this point I'd still be looking in the fridge. I'd be filtering through the drawer in the bottom of the fridge. I see some mushrooms. Let's put some mushrooms in the soup. Okay, you will know what your favorite veggies are, but maybe this is your opportunity to get those veggies into you that you don't normally get to eat, because we can quickly whip them up into a soup. Now, those of you that love your tomato, it's going to go very well into the soup. Tomato is one of these foods that has the natural levels of glutamates. Now, I'm not talking about the monosodium glutamate, which is an extracted free form of glutamates, which is a neurotoxin to the brain. I'm not talking about that. The glutamate in the natural form in foods is an amino acid, and it's very important for the brain. Okay, so those glutamates are naturally high in things like tomatoes and mushrooms and all your meats and all your seafoods and things. That's why we kind of attribute them to adding a lot of flavor or adding that sort of savory characteristic to a dish. So it's nice to add a little bit of those into a breakfast soup. Then maybe you've got a nice big head of cauliflower or broccoli in there. Maybe you've even got a thing of broccoli and you've got all the stems on the broccoli that you don't normally eat. So the breakfast soup is a great opportunity to soften them down. You can just shave off a couple of bits of the stem, make sure it's not the really tough woody bit at the end, and then you're not going to be as likely to then waste the stem of the broccoli, because we have a use for it. So pretty much we just need, like I said, even if it's a soup for one, just a tiny little piece of some other veggies, whatever you choose to enjoy. Okay. Now, in terms of flavor, most of the base of your flavor is going to come from your broth. Okay, so if you've made your stock or your broth and you've added in some nice spices while it's cooking, maybe a little bit of extra salt, knowing that it's going to make a very big volume of liquid. Okay, the main ingredient in most stock concentrates is salt, but at least if you make it, you can make sure that it's the good quality salt and not the table salt, right? Which then makes sure that you're getting those 82 to 84 trace minerals into your diet as well, which is a good thing, which are also AKA electrolytes. Okay, so don't be afraid of the good salts. They are definitely part of a very healthy diet. The Himalayan or the Celtic salt is what I'm talking about there. Okay, now there's another little realm of food called the aromatics. Okay, so the aromatics are things like the onions, the gingers, the garlics, the chilies, the things that are quite pungent and quite strong in flavor. So for breakfast, you probably don't want a lot of them, and it's much nicer if we're gonna cook them down in a soup. But if you have it on hand, like this one was just a little bit of an extra open onion that we had, pull it out of the fridge, pop some in, there's your soup. The key thing here is to let it be different every time. This is an opportunity to not only use up what you need to use up in your fridge, but it's also an opportunity to get things into you that you might not otherwise sit down and eat on their own. Okay, so use this opportunity. So far, I guess I've kind of followed the recipe, but one thing I wanted to point out in terms of being in the flow. Now, this is a concept that I work a lot with people in my program, is the idea of being in the flow. So when you're in the flow, you've pretty much got a roll-on happening in your freezer. So you're going to be doing a food prep effort, for example, of a Sunday. You might make a double, triple batch of something, and then that goes in the freezer and you're only using a little bit of it now. So then the next week, when you make a totally different double, triple batch of something, you start to then build up, I guess, a roll-on of things that are in your fridge and your freezer. And then that way it facilitates all these other activities that you do day to day and makes something like a quick, delicious breakfast soup very doable. So generally speaking, if I'm doing this quickly in the morning, as soon as I've decided on an ingredient, it's also getting chucked into the pot because it's not going to get cooked for very long at all. So, if you want your mushrooms whole, just chuck them in. All these things are just going to simmer down in that nice boiling broth, and we're going to deal with flavoring it up later. Okay, so a couple little pieces, might leave those nice and big and chunky, and we're just going to put this all straight into the broth. So come on back and see how simple it is. And that's probably quite a bit. This is easily going to be a soup for two. Okay, now you might be sitting there thinking, oh, that's kind of boring, it's all vegetables, and I understand that. So to make it, I guess, give it more sustenance, give it more oomph, give it more filling characteristics. I can kind of hear some of the males in the room going, where's the meat? And I understand that feeling, because it's that feeling of wanting to feel full and satiated and not need to have to snack all day or graze all day. Now, I'm definitely a fan of that, but I'd like to make this your opportunity to get more beans or lentils or legumes into your diet, because the cultures around the world, guys, that live the longest and the happiest, the key trend amongst all of them is that they eat a lot of beans. Now, it is just the magical fruit, but it's for good reason, as in it's got such good quality fiber and such good quality other nutrition, plant-based nutrition, phytonutrients, of which science knows only a tiny little tip of the iceberg about. Beans are the magical fruit. And the more you eat of them, actually, the less you're going to experience those effects of the magical fruit, okay? We need to build up your gut to enjoy that, because it's actually your gut bacteria that's loving the good quality fiber from it. That's what the good gut bacteria in the large intestine actually feeds off of, is the good fiber. So if you get a really strong wind reaction to eating beans, it's probably because we haven't got a really great gut balance and we haven't trained your gut bacteria to feed off of the beans. So if that's happening, I would recommend you eat a smaller amount of them, but more regularly until you can build up that tolerance and build up your ability to just have the benefits of the magical fruit, not the side effects. So make this your opportunity to have beans. Now, you can just keep tins of beans on hand. If you're going to do that though, please try to always keep organic beans. And there's a bit of a joke that a few people, I guess I've heard say is, at least if things aren't going so well in their businesses or whatnot, at least they can say they're eating organic baked beans instead of the regular ones. So definitely look for organic if you're going to have these on hand in a tin. The next step up from this, the more you are getting into the flow, would be to have your own lot of dried beans soaked. I would recommend doing a big batch at a time. So you'd soak a big batch of your own favorite beans at a time. And then ideally cook them. They're fastest and they're softest to cook in a pressure cooker. If you haven't got a pressure cooker, that's okay. They'll just take maybe 3 hours on the stove to really soften down to the same level as the ones in the tin. Okay, and then at that point you would be wanting to freeze the cooked beans so that you can just go into the freezer and grab a couple at a time and chuck them into your breakfast soup any morning that you wish. Okay, so they do not need to come out of a tin. This is kind of a backup stage or a transition stage to that. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a question. Hello Denise, welcome Casey, hi Jackie, good to see you, and Amanda, you guys love soup, that's awesome. Jackie, Denise, my gut needs training, that's awesome. Yes, it is training, you gotta get the training happening, you gotta eat less beans but more frequently and build that up. I promise you it's a good thing long-term for the gut. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but they're now, science now readily admits and agrees that about 80%, if not more, of your serotonin, your feel-good hormones are actually created in the gut. So the better balance we can create with those happy little things down there, then the happier you will be. So eat your beans and you will be happier in the long run, I promise. Okay, now, so, baked beans, the reason why I've chose these ones is because it's gonna add just that little bit of extra flavor. We're not intending for this to taste like baked beans. It's just gonna add that little bit of extra sweetness or tomato-ness or whatever the flavor is in your baked beans. We only need, say, 3 tablespoons or so to add this to our soup, especially if it's kind of a single serve. So we can just add a little bit of those in there for some extra flavor. Now I had this on the smallest burner, so bear with me here. I'm gonna get this going a bit faster. So I might just add a couple tablespoons of that in there, and then the rest of the beans we can leave in the fridge for another day, or you could even freeze into little ice cube trays so that you can just pop out a couple for a breakfast soup in the future, okay? So you can add a little bit more of that liquid if you want a little bit more of the flavor. And then the next thing that I would recommend is, especially, this is the most nourishing and sustaining meal that I've ever come across personally that really genuinely lasts me till lunch without any form of desire to snack or craving midway through the morning. Okay, so if we can get beans, and if you can tolerate it, some well-cooked and pre-soaked grains, okay, whether that's rice, whether that's millet, whether that's buckwheat, whether that's amaranth or quinoa, something like that on hand, and this, I promise you, will be such a filling, nourishing, sustaining, healthy breakfast that will last you till lunch, and it will make your day better, okay? So the way we do that is the same sort of deal as the beans. When you have cooked up a batch of rice or millet, this happens to be a mix of rice and millet, okay? So these are frozen pieces. So once you've cooked up some of this, and I would recommend doing this expressly, as in cook up a larger batch than what you're going to use next time you do cook these, okay? And with the leftovers, freeze them, but freeze them relatively flat so that you can take them out, and if you have to thaw them out a little bit so that you can break it up, then you put it back in the freezer, and then you've already got these broken pieces, so you can quickly just easily go into the freezer, grab out a little handful and stick it in the soup. Okay, so this is what I mean by a very simple and easy nourishing soup you can pull together in 5 minutes if you have these sort of 2 little things taken care of already in the freezer. Okay, so we're just going to add a little bit more of that nourishing, I guess, filling sustenance to it. A little bit of leftover rice and or millet. This is definitely a soup for two. It's funny how quick you can make too much. So it's a bit of a heads up, but then I guess you'll have it for tomorrow. Okay, we'll make sure this goes back into the freezer before it thaws out and then recongeals. So the idea is you keep it very frozen, it melts in the broth, and you're done. Okay, so that's pretty much cooked, as in we don't need to overcook it. We kind of want a little bit of crunch left in any carrots you use, or a little bit of crunch left in things, so that we kind of retain a little bit of that life force, a little bit of that freshness in the food, and it also gets you out the door quicker if that's the goal. So that rice and those grains just need to heat up, same with the baked beans, and then we're done. So the only last little step is if you want any other special little bits on top and any other little flavorings that we're going to add to it. So what I've suggested in the recipe, I tend to use miso paste as my #1 go-to, so I'll just show you that here quickly. Actually, yes, let's just season it up while we're back here. So I'll bring these all back. So miso paste, you could be using some tamari or some barbecue. These are coconut aminos. So it's like a tamari or a soy sauce, but it's made with coconut instead of soy. Okay. The good old salt and pepper is always an option. Okay, and we'll just start, we won't do the toppings yet. We'll just start with the flavorings first. Okay, and some other options you may be able to use are things that you have on hand in your fridge anyways, such as, hopefully you've got like a good quality barbecue sauce, as in like an organic barbecue sauce without all the numbers and additives in it. Same goes with a tomato sauce. You could just be using a bit of tomato paste, miso paste, tamari, coconut aminos. And again, the point is not for the soup to taste like any of these individually, but if we put a little bit of a few of them in, it just builds that flavor and accentuates that, I guess, that deliciousness of what we've got in the soup already. Okay, so that's definitely ready to go. I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so doesn't need long at all, especially if those veggies are cut up nice and small. Now, those of you that eat eggs, at this point, because there's enough steam and there's enough liquid in that, you could just crack an egg into that, but then you make sure you put the lid on and let it cook. It's going to need about 4 to 5 minutes to cook through, okay, unless you like a really soft egg. That's another option, and I personally absolutely love half of an avocado on top once we've dished it out. Okay, so I don't normally put a lot of effort into this stage of flavoring because it's just meant to be a quick breakfast soup and I'm just going to appreciate it for whatever it is. But you can just have a quick little taste and just see how much extra oomph you need to give it. It might just be salt and pepper. Okay. Okay, so it's got a little bit of that flavor from the beans. It's not overpowering though, which is great. Okay, so if you're going to be using the miso paste, I'd recommend you get a good quality miso. Forgive me for the, it's just a bit rubbed up here, but you're looking for an unpasteurized miso. And when it comes to soy, definitely go organic, okay? Because that's going to assure us that it's not genetically modified and that it's of a much better quality. Okay, so, and soy in its fermented form, I mean, this has been fermenting for 2 years. So this is a really good quality version of a soy product. And we're only going to be using a tiny, tiny little bit of it. It's as strong as Vegemite. It can actually be a substitute for Vegemite or Marmite or Promite instead, which is a lot healthier. Okay, so breakfast time. All I'm going to do, I might take a little bit of this miso paste. Again, doesn't need much. This is going to bring like a salty savoriness to it. And I just want to put it on the bowl first, because otherwise we're going to get little chunks of really saltiness in there. So I just kind of put it on the bowl first, get rid of all the chunks. And then when we put our soup on top, forgive me while I try not to spill this. There we go. Get all that goodness in there. Again, guys, remember it's different every single time. So it does not need to be anything strict. And then once we stir that miso in, we might then just need a little bit of extra salt and pepper. Okay. Or we'll finish it off with some macadamia parmesan, which is my favorite thing to have on hand at all times in the fridge. And if you haven't already seen that cook with me, I'll have to dig up and remember which video we did that in. We did it as a bit of a bonus, but it's as quick and as simple as in your food processor, just putting a handful of macadamias, a handful of sesame seeds or cashews, even sunflower seeds can work, and then about 1/4 cup or so of nutritional yeast and maybe 1 or 2 teaspoons of salt. And you blitz it until you get that texture. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it's just like a Parmesan type texture, a little bit chunkier than a Parmesan obviously, but that just depends on how finely you do that. So it's kind of like a nice salty, not quite crunchy, but another little option of a topping that I will put on. And like I said, I cannot go without the half of an avocado. I just love the creaminess, the smoothness. How's everyone going? Who is actually cooking with me tonight? Anyone just watching, or are you guys not sure if the Mambowl number 5 is for you? I know the song might have put you off, but... So there's our avocado. How are we all going? Amanda, good question. Was that the Italian meatballs that we did the macadamia parmesan? Yes, I think it might have been the Italian soup. That is a really good memory, Amanda. That's awesome. Thank you for that. My memory on the fly is not as good. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. I think that was the Italian zuppa soup. There we go. So we've got our half of an avocado. It's nice when it gets just that warmth from the soup, but we don't want to cook it, otherwise it can go a bit bitter. Right, and then a nice generous sprinkle of the macadamia parmesan or the dukkha. You might just absolutely love dukkha, so we could put that on instead. I love a good bit of this in the soup. And there's breakfast, or in this case dinner, but it can be anything. It can be your lunch, okay? The key that I really want you to get from this is that A, it's easy, B, it's quick, C, it uses up things that need to get used up in your fridge, and I suppose D, it's going to help you have a much better and happier day. So please practice your mambo dancing in the form of making your soup in the kitchen in the morning. And I really hope that you guys can explore all the different varieties and the different flavors that we can do with this. So Tracy, good question. Looks beautiful. I'm eating dinner while I watch. What are you having, Tracy? I'm curious. Long time no see. And Karen, oh, you guys are together cooking with Carrie. That's awesome. Thanks for getting together. It's so cool how you guys do that. Just get together, 2 friends get together in the kitchen and watch Cook With Me together so you guys can learn and socialize and have a good time while you do it. I absolutely love that you guys do that. Thank you. And Joe's only watching tonight. That's absolutely okay. Very cool. Well, I'm going to sit down to my breakfast/dinner soup and enjoy. And please, I do mean it when I say I want to hear your versions of your Mambowls. So pick a number, your favorite number, first in, best dressed, and maybe, who knows, we could start a little trend of the Mambowl creations around the world. Let it be something different every time. Enjoy it, and we'll see you next time on Cook With Me Live.